I can start by at least introducing myself. My name is Katie DeMeo. I'm a senior project manager for AIM Consulting. We're excited to be on this project, helping facilitate the public engagement. And so again, we're really excited to meet with you all tonight and talk about the Reading Active Transportation Network expansion, hear from you all about some of the areas in town that you're biking or walking to, some of your most familiar destinations, and have a great conversation here tonight. So with that, we'll get started. So even though we've been in Zoom for quite a while, we still want to go through some of our Zoom instructions. As you might have noticed so far, you are muted right now. Again, that's just to limit any background noise that might be happening. There's going to be plenty of times we're going to take everyone off of mute, have a big old conversation, have a question and answer session. So there'll be plenty of time to join the conversation. But for right now, just sit back, relax, and enjoy the presentation. You'll be able to put any comments in the chat box anytime that you would like. I also want to remind you that this meeting is being recorded here tonight for the purposes of grant writing, as well as we're going to try and get it up onto SRTA's YouTube page as fast as possible so that we can pass this along to anyone who might have missed this tonight, and we can still encourage comments into this project. The final thing is that we will be using some Zoom live polling tonight. And so when those live polling starts, it will jump up right onto your screen. You'll be able to interact with it right on screen, and we'll be able to show the results as it comes. All right, let me just let a couple more people in. That's wonderful. All right, so the next screen I'm going to show you is that we're going to go over our very brief agenda tonight. So I'm doing some of the meeting orientation and the welcomes right now. We then have Zach here with the City of Reading, who will give a welcome to the meeting tonight. Then we'll go over some project background, an introduction of the network. We'll pause for some question and answers before we start our mapping activity. That's really going to be a big chunk of time here tonight, where we'll be able to ask you all questions and get as much interaction and comments onto our map as possible. We'll come back, talk about some of the proposed improvements, have a last minute for some feedback and input, and then let you know how to stay up to date with the project, how to still interact with the project, and the next steps here. So with that, I'm really excited to introduce our project team. So first, we have our partners of the City of Reading, Zach Bonin. With Shasta Regional Transportation Agency, we have Keith Williams and Michael Cooker. With Kittleson and Associates, we have Matt Broughton and Chris Romano. With Tool Design, we have Kristen Losey. Again, I introduced myself as Katie DeMeo. I have my technical support with Fiona Ferris with AIM. And then we have Dan Bartleson with Evan Brooks Associates rounding out our team here tonight. And so the first thing, we're going to get to know you a little bit. So as you can see, there's going to be 3 questions on the screen, but we're going to start with the first one. So we really want to know, what brings you to the City of Reading? I'm going to launch the poll now. Maybe you live here, maybe you work here, go to school here, own a business, have friends here, maybe some family, or if there's some other reasons, please put it in the chat. Wonderful. All right. So it looks like we have a lot of people who live in the area, so that's fantastic. So we're really excited to see that. So the next question that I'm going to launch is, aside from driving, how do you get around the city of Reading? Do you take the bus? Maybe do you bike, walk, use an assisted device? If there's any other ways that you're traveling around, we'd love to hear it in the chat. And if you only drive, you can answer that at the end as well. Great, we have some walking and biking people in the audience. That's fantastic. So as you can see here, we have a lot of walking and biking people, which is great. And so for the last live poll question, for this session, what would encourage you to walk or bike more to your destinations? Maybe more crosswalks, better lighting, better or more complete sidewalks, more complete bike lanes, maybe slowing down cars in the vehicle traffic. And if there's any others, please feel free to put it in the chat. And this one is multiple choice. Leave it up for one more second. All right, and this is fantastic. Got some great results here. Wonderful. All right, and with that, I'm going to turn the program over to Zach Bonin from the City of Reading. Oh, are you able to unmute yourself?
There we go.
There we go.
Thank you. My name is Zach Bonin. I'm with the City of Reading, and well, the reason why I'm here tonight is part of the active transportation planning grant process is that we do on a biannual cycle to look at these types of projects for the state, and are always trying to improve our active transportation network. And so what the city does is we look for these opportunities, and then we partner with the Shasta Regional Transportation Agency, and we go out to the public to try to find out what are the best and promoted routes that we need for the city of Reading. What are the routes that are most needed throughout the community? What are the best connections? And then also what fits the grant application process the best. And so what we've done is we've kind of gathered some stakeholder input. We've looked around, we've talked to some of the consultants and gathered a few different ideas for you here tonight to look at. And we wanted to kind of get the generalized concept to look at these zones and areas to make sure that the community is on board with our thoughts of what are the best grant applications that we're going to put forward this year. So we're really hoping that we'll get some good comments and thoughts and ideas from the community that we can help put towards the grant application and get some good input to help us build a better application and also build a better network of connected sidewalks, bike lanes, and other active transportation facilities throughout town. And also another focus this year for the City of Reading is we're starting to look more at neighborhoods and how to interconnect neighborhoods to slow traffic down through neighborhoods, and also provide for better connections from different trail networks through the neighborhood. So it does a double purpose where it actually works as a way to slow speeds through the neighborhood, but also acts as a nice trail facility connection. So we're starting to look at neighborhoods to address that, and there's a few on this year's plan, but in the future we're looking at other neighborhoods throughout the community that would be good at candidates for the same type of treatment. So if you have ideas or thoughts for this neighborhood, it might work well here or in your future neighborhood, or in the neighborhood for you in the future when we apply for that type of grant for that area. So any of those types of comments would be helpful. And thank you for coming tonight, and I appreciate your time with us. And these are very helpful meetings, and so we appreciate they are something that we need to do to get these applications and see these facilities be built. So I'd like to pass it over. Let's go back to Katie, and then she can introduce Keith if you like. That'd be great.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yes, and thank you so much, Zach. That was wonderful. And with that, it's my pleasure to announce Keith Williams. Keith.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, and thank you, Zach. You touched on a lot of great points there about what we're doing, and yeah, like the slide here indicates, really what we're trying to do is prepare competitive grant applications that'll increase safety, public health, increase number of walking and biking trips, ensure underrepresented communities share in project benefits. All those things are actually really just positive externalities about what Zach was talking about, of just getting projects that slow cars down. And so ultimately, this is an effort that will benefit all modes of transportation in terms of safety. So yeah, it's a great effort, and it builds off of prior efforts. So you know, the Shasta Regional Transportation Agency and the City of Reading already partnered back in 2017, 2018 on planning for the city of Reading and for the Shasta region as a whole to identify projects and project areas that make sense to focus on in later efforts when we want to try and get funding to build those projects. And so here we are. we're trying to do exactly that. And so the active transportation program, they really want us to dive in deep on public engagement, like Zach was talking about. And this makes sense, you know, because if we're engaging the community, then we're going to create a project that is responsive to community needs, but then also it's B, very important for the grant program, so we get points. And this is very important because, and if you go to the next slide, the active transportation program is the greatest source of active transportation funding in the state and is insanely competitive. So we really must put our best foot forward. And that's why we do these events like we're having tonight. And it's why it's so critical that all of you participating chime in. You know, if you're a resident, chime in. If you're representing a CBO or an NGO or a foundation or some other O, then you need to chime in and provide input, because the program really weights that heavily. And so yeah, just if you look at that third bullet here, I mean, I put it in a laundry list of some of the things that are really important. You can see just by looking at that, this program is not focused on walking and biking as recreation. No, this is really an alternative form of transportation, you know, looking at connecting to schools, connecting to bus stops and housing, and ensuring better mobility for seniors and people with mobility who are disadvantaged with mobility. A lot of things here. So if you just take a look at that third bullet, please keep that lens in mind when we're going through the presentation tonight. And yeah, maybe filter some of your comments through this lens so that we can really get that input that we need to make these projects just super successful. I mean, we know some of them already tick a lot of these boxes, but hearing from you, your personal stories, that's really going to put it over the top. So, and then that third, that last bullet there, how to get projects grant ready. Like I said, building off of those previous planning efforts, doing this public engagement. And then what comes next is we do we take that input to inform the project designs and creates, you know, those wonderful facilities for walking and biking for all ages and abilities. And then Dan Bartleson, he's on the call today. He's from Evan Brooks Associates, from our stellar grant writing team, and their job is pretty hefty. They have to convince a lot of different evaluators from different backgrounds, engineers, planners, activists, all these different backgrounds. That this project or these projects are worth the investment of state dollars and federal dollars. So yeah, that's what's next is having the grant writing done. But we'll talk about more of that later. We've got a great team here tonight. Thank you all for showing up, and I'll pass it back to Katie.
Wonderful. And I think with that, we're going to go to the next slide, and we're going to introduce Matt Broughton to talk about the network projects.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you again so much for coming out here. Maybe before I dive into this, I'd just say if you are here representing an organization, as Keith mentioned, really just appreciate if you could share in the chat. And again, I would just really strongly encourage you to, when we get into the feedback portion and engagement activities, really do appreciate your perspective as you're working with a number of people within the community and have a really good understanding of kind of their needs and locations that they're going. So I really want to encourage that participation. So just to set the tone tonight of where we're working. So as Zach mentioned, we have a kind of a neighborhood focus for this effort. We're working in 3 different neighborhoods. Just on the map here, very quickly looking at the Butte Street Boogie Network. So a low stress walking and biking network kind of on the west side of downtown. Looking at extending the Victor Avenue improvements north and over into the Mistletoe neighborhood. And then the third one is the neighborhood focused around Hilltop Drive. So really trying to build off some of the great improvements that have already happened within the city, extend that network out and build up that network connectivity within the neighborhoods. In addition to that, we're also supporting work on the Rattle project. So the North Reading Active Transportation trunk line that you see there on the north side of the city. There's already been some outreach around that, but if you do have comments around that project, we definitely would love to take some input. And then we also have Park Marina Drive, sorry, it says Boulevard there, but Park Marina Drive, where we know there's already been a lot of engagements. That's really not the focus for tonight. Part of the project that we'll be submitting as part of that is to do a pilot to help inform some of that outreach that has been going on. So with that next slide, I'll start talking about what we've been up to. So we kicked things off with a multi-day walk audit and charrette process with the city and stakeholders and SRTA staff. You see a couple slides, a couple photos here just from walking around in the Victor neighborhood of really just trying to get an understanding of what are the conditions on the ground, what are the opportunities for us to make improvements, what are going to be some of those key issues that we need to work through as part of that. So again, it was getting out there, seeing some of these larger roads like Victor, to be able to understand how we might change them to fit conditions, but then also visiting some of the schools in the area to understand specific issues related to getting kids walking and biking to their most important destination. Next slide, just to share a few things that were pretty consistent throughout our audits. Is just really, I think, emphasizing the point that a lot of great things have been happening around walking and biking improvements over the last few years in the city. So this is the Center Street improvements, just adding a lot of new walking and biking facilities across the city. And so we want to take advantage of that, leverage that, build out those connections and help close some of those gaps. Next slide. We also, in walking through and biking through these neighborhoods, really understand that there are a lot of neighborhood streets that could be adapted to be really comfortable connections for people and walking and biking with just some small changes. You can see the mini roundabout that's in the on Shasta Street, west side of downtown, and then an example of a diverter over near Victor Avenue, again, kind of closing off for traffic, but allowing people that are walking and biking to continue through. So just some strategies that could be used to help slow vehicles down and make things more comfortable for people walking and biking. Again, a couple important schools in our study areas. And so again, that's a clear focus for these projects, particularly looking at some of those key crossings near Mistletoe and Manzanita elementary schools to really support walking and biking and making sure that students are comfortable getting to school. And then finally, just recognizing that there are some large roads in the city and those crossings pose major challenges for people walking and biking, and that we really want to think through what are the opportunities to either right size some of those or to address some of the crossings to make sure that those connections can be made, and that when we create these facilities, that it's a smooth, low stress experience from end to end for people of all ages and abilities that are walking and biking. And sorry, then finally, also, I think it was mentioned here earlier, and I think we saw in some of the feedback of one of the most common responses of what would make it more pleasant to walk or bike in Reading was addressing sidewalk gaps. And so we definitely recognize the importance of filling in those gaps, creating that continuous network so that you can continue along on an accessible path so that everybody can walk, bike, or roll comfortably through the city. So again, we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about each of these neighborhoods of what we saw very briefly here. Just want to again reorient you to the 3 areas that we're focused in on here. And I'll start off with the Butte Street project. So really, this project is looking at neighborhood greenways, primarily with some additional connection points to connect into some of the great improvements like on California Street that are, and on West Street that are coming in right now. And really focusing on how can we slow traffic in these neighborhoods to help make it comfortable to bike in the street. How do we formalize those existing routes that people are already taking? Filling in again those sidewalk gaps that we saw, and then adding crosswalks and curb ramps so that there's comfortable connections and that they're enhanced to be able to allow everybody to get to those destinations, get to school, get downtown, get to the transit and bike depot that's coming in, as well as those broader regional connections to make this as impactful a project as possible while still being focused within a neighborhood. Next slide. For the Victor Avenue project, again, we're building off of the work that's already going on to the south on Victor. So extending that project north on the east side of this project to continue that up towards the 44 interchange. We recognize we want to get across that interchange eventually, but as part of this project, really focused in on expanding that path, on working with what we can currently and slowing traffic down. Again, on Mistletoe, with the importance of the school crossings there around the elementary school, really trying to get that traffic calming in there so there's a comfortable location for people to walk or bike, for youth to be able to walk or bike comfortably as well. And then creating those comfortable connections on neighborhood streets, recognizing not everybody's going to be comfortable on some of the busier roads. We want to create that bikeway network to help support there, fill in those sidewalk gaps, and again, create those connections to all the destinations within the neighborhood. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kristen to talk a little bit about her work on the Hilltop project.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. So similar themes in the Hilltop area. This area already has bike lanes and a walking path, but they're not very comfortable for biking because there's a lot of busy traffic. So looking at how we can create a more comfortable space for people walking and slowing traffic so that it's comfortable and feels safe for people. Great link to neighborhoods. There's a lot of great connections, kind of all ages. There's early childhood development center to the north and some senior housing and assisted living, and then obviously connections to regional biking trails, to transit, and then shopping and dining areas. So yeah, this one will go from north all the way down Hilltop, and then we're looking at creating kind of a neighborhood bikeway down Palisades Avenue to the trail connection, which isn't shown here, but it links up to the trail on the south end. All right.
Yeah, just to briefly re-emphasize here, a couple other ATP projects that we're helping support as part of this cycle is again that Rattle project on the north side of the city. It's a combined project between Caltrans, SRTA, the city of Reading, and Shasta County, all working together to get this great trunk line facility to connect the dots there, kind of paralleling 299. And so that's a resubmittal of previous work. Definitely would love to hear any additional comments or thoughts around that community area. We want to make sure we're addressing those, but that project did go through its own engagement process already. And then Park Marina Drive, we recognize, so we are helping the city apply for a pilot project for that to help support additional engagements. We understand there's been a lot of engagement around that project, and that pilot is really intended to help inform some of that ongoing engagement to find what is the ideal solution for that really important facility in the city. With that, I'll hand it back over to Katie.
Wonderful. Again, we're getting some really fantastic questions or comments into the chat box. So what we're going to do is we're going to pause here for any clarifying questions or and again, at this point, you all can unmute yourself if you need to and kind of join in. But again, if you have any clarifying questions about what Matt just went over, what Keith just went over, that would be great. And okay, so I think we can move on to the map activity because, oh, somebody asked, what is NRATTL again? Because Keith put in the chat, if anyone lives just west of the NRATTL or knows of people who live there, we would especially love your input on that project.
Yeah, and so
Matt?
that is the North Reading active transportation trunk line. And if you see there on the map, following 299 on the north side of the city there, it's connecting over from 273 over to the edge of the city with a shared use path connecting across a couple of the, kind of creating a trunk line or a kind of critical connection between the east side of the city down towards 273 to be able to connect into downtown.
Great. All right. Okay. And so with that, let's move on to the next screen. And we will move into our mapping activity. So again, from here, we're going to unshare this screen and we're going to bring up a new screen, and you're going to see on this screen, we've already started trying to populate some of the things that you have put in the chat, because again, this is fantastic information that you're already putting in the chat. But again, the goal of this activity here is we're going to be asking a series of questions here. We would love for you to unmute yourself, tell us a story, tell us your input on these questions, put more things in the chat if you're able to. And again, you're going to see these Post-it notes start to formulate around the map, and the more Post-it notes we have, the more data that we have leading into this grant writing, and it's fantastic. So again, we're going to ask a series of questions. At this point, you all can unmute yourself, you can put your answers in the chat, or you can again just interact with us however best you can. So the first question here is, do you walk or you bike today? And if not, why aren't you? I know we have some bikers because you responded on that live poll question that a few of you bike around. But for those of you who didn't, is there a reason that you're not biking around town? All right. Okay, so maybe we'd also love to hear Roberta.
It looks like a couple of people maybe sent something in the chat. And of course, just to reiterate, you all can unmute yourselves to share your comments, but it looks like Richard and Katrin maybe provided some comments.
Got it. All right. It looks like Catherine wrote, I walk and run in my neighborhood or on trails. That's great. And hopefully Richard will leave the house tomorrow because he wasn't able to get out today. So always for tomorrow. So again, that is great. And again, feel free. We're going to concerns about secure bike parking. You know, that came up last night when we were talking in Bernie as well. So again, Janet has some concerns about secure bike parking and lack of separated lanes.
Looks like 2 people have commented on the bridge over I-5 and off Hilltop.
Great.
And also I wanted to comment for Richard's sake, I put something in the chat about the bridge on Churn Creek and Old Alturas is in the works of being replaced. This is Zach from the city, but he also brings up a good point, and it did come up recently about extending the Victor project north of Highway 44 up to Old Alturas area. And it has been a discussion we've had in recent weeks about, I wish we could do that, but I think what we really need to do is focus on what the city is thinking about at this point. We're going to take that comment into consideration because it is still something we're thinking about, and those are good comments. But you know, with that bridge being rebuilt and some projects occurring up at the North Victor end, I definitely wanted to take that into consideration. But there's a major barrier, and that's Highway 44, and the consultants and the city have been discussing about try to focus on the south side this cycle, and then I'm pretty confident we'll focus on the north side in the future cycle, or if we don't get this one, maybe combine it into a larger project that would be the whole cycle, the whole section up to Old Alturas. So that is in the works. I just kind of wanted to throw that out there while you guys are typing some stuff in there and add some comments. So looks like we're getting a lot of good comments.
Absolutely. And again, we'll have the ability to save all of this chat, get it right onto the map after it as well. And again, these are absolutely fantastic comments. It looks like Sarah wrote, south of the I-5 bridge on Hilltop is very scary for cyclists. Absolutely. They have a merge on to avoid a right-hand turn. Drivers are coming down the hill very fast. There's a question that can the Hilltop project be extended south a bit?
Where to? What do you mean, Sarah? Where do you like to go?
I'm
Hilltop
thinking
along-
to Browning Street.
Yep. Casa
Well,
Ramos.
again, we the problem there. So I don't know how to. The Caltrans bridge is a major impediment, and so in these grants, if we don't have really good connections between the two, we'd have to address that piece, and that piece is easily a grant unto itself just to cross the I-5 piece, I'm guessing. So it would be bifurcated quite a bit. I wish we could get down to Browning because that is where everything starts to interconnect. Caltrans is thinking about trying to do some stuff north and south under the Hilltop Bridge, and then we could interconnect some things, which would be interesting. But with this grant cycle, that's why we kind of dove off into Palisades down to the river trail, and thinking about paving that overlook area down to the river trail as and basically an attempt to avoid all that Browning area for now. But you're right, Browning to Old Alturas is really the major east-west. That is our goal, to interconnect all these things. The next trail does a pretty good trail connection down to the View Trail, but if you're familiar with those, sorry, I'm talking about a lot of trail names.
No, that's great. Wonderful.
This
we
is
are-
Roberta. I was interested in what's happening in front of the new senior housing on Hilltop across from where the car wash used to be. There's some temporary striping and stuff that's very, very confusing right now, which is a construction issue, but how bicycles and pedestrians are going to be accommodated there. Specifically, right now, the curves aren't signed properly, and the speeds people are losing control on those curves as vehicles. I'm also a driving instructor, so I take students through there all the time, and I kind of point out some of these things where bicycles should be and where the cars should be. And so I see a lot of the city driving around town with students.
Interesting. Yeah, the final design, I believe the striping, we were just this week, the city was putting the marks down to put the 3-lane section with bike lanes, with buffered bike lanes, I believe, around those corners. And that should be striped here in the next week or so. I'm curious to see how it actually turns out, and I'd like to see your opinion how that final design is, because I think the final design should be adequate and the signs should handle the curves. But if you see anything after they finish all that stuff in the next couple of weeks, definitely let us know here at the city. But the nice thing about it is it'll set the tone for the rest of Hilltop. Oh, sorry.
Right. But the after the fact might be a little too late. I've seen the temporary striping, but right now it's very confusing where people should be, because the construction zone is not delineated very well. And I did see some of the paint marks where they show a crosshatching in the buffered bike lane. But during construction, they had 35-mile-per-hour speed limit, and the curves are signed for 25.
Yes, I'm aware of some of those issues, and I'll pass those along again to the construction management team. Thank you for those comments. And we're aware of some of those things. We've been trying to keep a handle on some of that with the construction team out there.
Right. Anyway, so but bicycles and pedestrians have to be accommodated too during that construction stuff.
Agreed.
Absolutely. Wow. Again, fantastic, really detailed comments, which is absolutely great. And just please keep them coming. I'm going to ask another question here is maybe what are some of the most frequented locations in these areas? Where are you going to? Where are the hot spots in town? Is there any destinations you want to have more accessible? Butte Street Boogie, walking over railroad crossing in downtown is very uncomfortable. It's a great question. It's a great comment. Let me add that right here.
Well, I can say that as well. I sent the consultants just recently, the city and the railroad have approved a project to do a PED improvement project across that railroad on Shasta Street, which will start here in a few weeks. That project we're trying to incorporate into the final design of what we're trying to do for this area on Shasta Street. And that actually is playing into how we design that crossing because of some of the cycle facilities and how we do that across railroad tracks. But the PED facilities should be pretty adequate after this is completed, this project. So the only problem is going to be right over Rodeo Week, and they're going to try to close that zone down right over Rodeo Week. So if you're on the call, I would avoid that area during Rodeo Week. So anyway.
Great. And it looks like the school, lots of car traffic, making it difficult. That's exactly the kind of answers that we're looking for there. Any other locations that you know that people are really frequenting in this area that we want to make sure are super accessible and super safe?
Well, Hilltop is going to be the mall area and shopping areas between Lake Boulevard and Hilltop.
Absolutely, Roberta. Richard asks, is there any signage for the new trail from Hilltop to 44? Does anyone in the project team know? Maybe not. We might have to follow up with that question with you.
Oh, this is Zach. I can answer it a little bit. Travis, Menny, and I think he was on the call earlier from Community Services. We're working on a little bit of a wayfinding plan to connect that next trail through Highland Park down to the View Trail that connects down to the River Trail. So that wayfinding plan has been held up as we kind of develop some of these projects. We're trying to do it in a more comprehensive manner. But we are actually out talking with SRTA as well to even do it potentially regionally, where we have a wayfinding plan that addresses some of these trail connections. As they're getting built relatively quickly, but we're starting to get these connections. And so connecting trail signage is becoming much more important to figure out how to cut through these neighborhoods and do these type of connections. So anyway, with like the Butte Street example, trying to make sure that the signage is adequate to go through there. The consultants have provided some great ideas too for the next application for on-street signage or on the road pavement markings and a few other interesting solutions. So you should be seeing that in the near future.
Yeah, Keith, or sorry, I was reading Keith's name. This is Travis. Zach, you did that perfectly. It's exactly what I would say. We're working on it and it is forthcoming.
Great. Again, so much great information. It looks like Jan has talked about some spots that a great place you might get hit by a car in. And those are that leads me to our next question. If you know of any spots that people are having near misses or have any crashes in recently, we want to earmark those as well and make sure it's paying attention to there. And so it looks like the walking in the intersection of Shasta and Pine in downtown Reading. Keith also asked, does anyone ever use Palisades Ave or the Dana to downtown trail to access the shopping area? Sarah wrote that a sign at Mount Shasta Mall is needed. It's great. We'll get that right up onto here. And again, the comments are coming in so fiercely on the chat. I've jumped in to help. All right. And then
Katie, I want to just note something. I'm watching this on my tablet. I'm sure some folks are on their phone, and you can't enlarge the screen, and so all these little post-it notes are almost very difficult to read.
Yeah, and the point is more that it's like we're hearing you, we're putting them on, and all of these are going to be included in our grant application. But we can definitely zoom in a bit more so you can kind of see that we're grabbing all of your comments. We're trying to put as many of them around as possible so that we can make sure that when we come to the grant writing phase, that we'll be able to again, make sure all of the comments is possible.
Well, is there a plan for a future workshop in person kind of thing?
I'm not sure, Keith. Is there any more plans for any in-person engagement activities after this? I know Keith in his next steps is going to talk about how to stay engaged and tell more stories and stay in touch with him. But I'm not quite sure leading up to the grant writing.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have some workshops well, not workshops, but meetings to kind of work out some project details with some of our partners, and then later we'll have a follow-up final meeting to kind of come back to the public and share how the designs have been informed by this engagement. But yeah, it remains to be seen, how we're going to do that final engagement. But yeah, that's sort of the plan right now.
Absolutely. More in-person engagement. I would love to be more in person with people a little bit more as well. And again, thank you so much for these comments. They've mentioned scooter and bikes on the sidewalks. That's also a problem.
yep.
Yeah, we have that in the city a lot as well, because that's Michael asked, are there particular days and times that work best in the future for in-person events outside of work hours? Do you all prefer weekends? Do you prefer right after work, maybe a 4:30, 5 o'clock start, or maybe after dinner?
For these kinds of meetings?
Yeah.
Boy, later in the evening.
Like
and not
a
on Cinco-
like a
and not on
7 p.m.
Cinco de Mayo.
start, or
6, 7. I know it was a rush for me to get back home to jump on. And yeah, but during the day doesn't work for a lot of people.
that's what we thought, yeah. But we didn't want to dominate dinner hour either. So, we're always accepting feedback. So anything you can do to let us know how we can serve you better is always appreciated.
Yeah, and Cinco de Mayo was today too.
Oh, yeah.
And then, yeah, integrating workshops and chances for input at existing events. Absolutely. That is great. All right. So any other areas that you might feel unsafe walking or biking around, even driving around? There was a question in here that I'm not actually sure of. Anna asked that if she were to have an incident on her bike or walking, where would she report that? Looks like Michael might know. I saw him perk up.
I just have to find it. I'll paste it in the chat. So there's a new tool that all of the local jurisdictions, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Keith, are trying to get everyone to provide feedback on, so that all of the different jurisdictions can go in and check it, rather than you trying to figure out who the road, is, whose responsibility the road is. So I'll paste it in the chat as soon as I find it.
That'd be great. I'm always looking for the right person to call.
Fantastic.
Well, and I see a lot of different current striping treatments of bike lanes. There's some are really, really good, and then some kind of just all over the city tend not to be consistent in the signage as well, and especially at intersections.
Great. And Catherine just added, Plaster Street is challenging to cross when not at a light. Again, fantastic comment. Add that right in there. Striping's not a better route to Anderson. 273 is a good shoulder for most parts, but lots of cars and high speeds. It's a great point, Richard. And it looks like Michael did put that link in the chat. You might want to take that down. My final question here is, do you know of anyone that lives in assisted living or has any who doesn't have transportation options? And if they have any transportation difficulties getting to and from where they need to go as well? Again, we're trying to make sure that we're looking into every community, into every area, and making everything as accessible as possible. So any accessibility issues? Again, the walking or the scootering on the sidewalk, I'm sure, is an accessibility issue. California Street downtown.
So right off the top of my head is the Victor project includes sidewalks south of Cypress to Hartnell.
Great. Catherine wrote getting to Pine Street and Safeway.
I think that was a question from Roberta, if I'm not mistaken, Katie.
Oh.
She's asking if there, Roberta, were you asking if there's improvements south of Cypress on
Victor.
Well, I'll let Zach answer that.
Yeah, that was actually their last cycle that sort of helped the city of Reading put an application in for, and we were successful on. So that portion between Cypress and Hartnell is funded and just literally went out to design in the past 2 weeks to a consultant to start drawing up the final plans, and that'll include new curbs, gutters, sidewalks, bike lanes, and a path on one side, on the west side of the road, that'll be extra wide and separated from the traffic. So really nice facility that'll have a protected intersection at Hartnell, and then a roundabout will be placed at corner of Cypress and Victor. And this application is actually north of that intersection of Cypress and Victor up to Mistletoe. So since we got that application, that was part of the reason why it'd be really great if we could extend this up to, at least up to the 44 ramps, but we're going to stop it just short at the Mistletoe intersection. So it's exciting to get the Victor corridor almost, mostly completed.
Gotcha. Yeah, the work on Churn Creek, I'm sure is very similar, and that's been a big improvement on Churn Creek Road.
Yes.
All right. Fantastic. Again, really fantastic comments. Talked about the railroad is a scary road to bike or walk. Getting to Pine Street and Safeway. Catherine mentioned this earlier with the transition from the curb ramp, the most difficult to be reported at Shasta Street and California Street by Napa. And again, fantastic. And again, the details on it have been really great. Catherine says she sees seniors walking along Canby to and from Canby and Browning intersection. Super helpful.
Yeah, that is a good point, where Catherine and I met once with the senior housing on California, that group at the Lorenz. And that was a really good public meeting about walking safety downtown. And so that might be something we might be able to kind of fold into some of the grant applications in the future. Some of her comments kind of reflect some of that input that we received there. It seems like that was really helpful.
Absolutely. Park Marina Drive could use more crosswalks, a lot more pedestrians start across the street. Absolutely. Let's get that on here. It's always fun to see these start populating around the board. Not a lot of colors. We've got about 10 more minutes in this activity or so. So again, please, if there's any more input, any more places that you know of, any reasons why people that aren't walking or biking around, what might encourage them more to do that. But again, some of these the street names are perfect. The actual locations are great. Fantastic info.
Follow-up question: if anyone knows of elderly people or kids or people with mobility challenges in any of these areas, or if you've witnessed that people having challenges in these areas, any anecdotes like that, do let us know by unmuting yourself or putting that in the chat. That would be handy, or trying to access transit, some of those things. Thank you.
Yeah, Richard had a question. How will the Butte Street connect to the new downtown area and to the Center Street project?
Yeah, so the primary connection we're looking at right now is along Shasta Street. And so kind of trying to connect up right to where the bike depot is coming in to get over to California there. We're also looking at another connection on Tehama. And so that would be kind of on the south side of downtown as well. So yeah, trying to,
Sorry,
go ahead.
I think just a correction there. I don't think it's on Tehama, but on Yuba. Isn't that right,
Oh,
Zach?
I'm sorry. Yeah, apologies. Yeah, you bet. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I think we've looked at Shasta, Tehama, and Yuba. Everybody's familiar with those kind of east-west, I would think. And Shasta has some positive things. And I noticed that Sarah mentioned again Tehama and about the diagonal movements for parking on Tehama being problematic. And, you know, now that parking's changing, that's something we can readdress downtown. There's some changes with the California cycle track that might affect some of that Tehama intersection. And then Yuba, as that opens up, that turns out to be a pretty good option with the west end having some potential for a little cut through up to, what road is that? West? Up north of, just, what's behind Court?
Yeah, west. Yeah.
West. Yeah, between Court and West, Yuba has the potential to kind of connect to the county properties that we're still kind of vetting out those ideas if you've ever kind of cut through those parking lots in there. And so Yuba is a nice straight east-west that could have some potential going down the hill, down east over to Park Marina and can start to connect those up. So there's a lot of different considerations in that area where that's kind of why we do these workshops, to get those kind of comments and thoughts. And in the end, I'd like to do all three, but you know, we probably will have to focus some of our efforts on one or two streets.
Great. William, you put in the chat, a lot of people, you know, don't feel comfortable traveling on or on the corner of California and Yuba. Do you have any reasons? Do you know why?
Right now it's construction.
Yeah. Yeah, again, answers like that are really helpful for us when writing this grant, to know like specifically why they're feeling so uncomfortable. Maybe some lack of sidewalks, better lighting, like you said, construction. Catherine, the new Hill Country Clinic off Church could use a bus connection. Fantastic. And so again, I would keep the comments coming in the chat. A younger community member shared that the bus routes running in circles rather than the north, south, and east, west made it more difficult to get around town. It's a great observation. All right. And then Anna wrote, with the more neighborhood streets closed to through traffic around battle areas would be nice. And East Side Road. Great. All right, I would encourage everyone to get their last comments in here. Again, for East Side Road, East Side will definitely. Fiona, can you put a thing on the there that says East Side Road, please?
Maybe a follow-up to Anna for the Butte Street neighborhood area there. Are there specific streets that you think of where you have cut through concerns of traffic kind of speeding through the neighborhood? Just curious to know. We are looking at traffic calming, which I'll be talking about in a minute, in that neighborhood. And so just want to understand if there are specific roads that you have concerns around speeding issues.
Would it help if we pulled up a map too?
Yeah, probably.
To that?
I'm trying to think.
Yeah, we could unshare the screen if someone wants to bring up a map. Great. And we'll put Sarah's point on the map. Can you extend what's been done at East Side and Polk South? Just make it more pleasant with paint and landscaping, lots of transient activity now as there's no eyes on that area. It's a great comment.
So
what
any
about
of
this?
these streets pose an issue as far as cut through in this general area from, say, Willis on up, Not all of them seem to go through all the way.
Yeah, a lot of them are narrow.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
let me, this is Anna with that comment. Let me analyze again where I feel like cars are going fast. I took a walk there through those neighborhoods yesterday and kind of noticed there were some speeding cars, but I'm semi new to the area and not great with maps, but I will look at that and give you feedback. So thank you.
yeah, that'll be very valuable. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah.
And I see
Great.
Clarissa shared that Olive is one of those streets where she sees people speeding through that neighborhood. So appreciate that as well.
Great. All right. And with, thank you, Clarissa. Is there any more comments on the map? Again, I can't thank you guys enough. This is fantastic information. Again, just to go through the questions again, why aren't you biking around town, or why aren't people you know biking or walking around town? What are some key places in the area? Maybe some destinations that you frequent a lot that you know that people are going to a lot. Maybe where do you feel some of those areas that are unsafe for biking or walking? Some of those problem areas, maybe some of the areas that have a near miss or know of some crashes that might have happened. If you can identify any of those areas. And then again, anyone with accessibility issues or anyone living in assisted living, anyone having any bit of trouble getting to where they need to go, we just want to make sure that we're addressing it. Janet is excited that Hilltop is listed on the projects. And great, it'll allow us to bike more to Lake Boulevard. Everyone loves a Starbucks and a Trader Joe's. Fantastic.
This is Anna again. Since I can't type as fast, I'll just speak up for like the last comment around downtown. I will go out of my way to take, I'm trying to explain. I live on like Court Street, Tehama, Oregon, that area. And I try to go on the Diesel Horse to Downtown Trail to the Sacramento River Trail because it's free of cars. And I frequent Tehama on my bike a lot to get to California to then cross over into Diesel Horse. And Shasta Street, I'm glad that that's being mentioned because cars do fly through there just to try to get all the green lights until they get to court. And then that light is very slow, like super
extremely slow.
Super slow. I don't know what it is. It's the timing on Shasta and Court.
Like a long time between cycles.
Yeah, it's good for people going Shasta to Court, taking a left or right onto Court. But then anybody who's on Court trying to get to cross Shasta, they're at that light for forever because the timing's off.
Yes, it's not actuated. It's gives a very, very long face, and there's everybody sitting there for the red light, and there's nobody moving.
Yeah, but basically, I do take Tehama even though it doesn't have bike lanes, because when everyone leaves downtown at night after 5 o'clock, I use the diagonals parking spots as my bike lane, and I feel safer on that instead of using Shasta that doesn't have any parking or bike lanes. So that's just my comment is like, yeah, the when there's no cars, but then when there are cars on Tehama, then they could back up into me being on a diagonal. So that's my last comment about living downtown.
Fantastic, Anna. Again, thank you all so much. And Sarah said, especially on Sundays. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so we're going to leave this open just for about another 2 minutes or so in case there's any other comments or maps. And again, during our next steps, we're going to give you Keith's email address. So in case you think of anything after this meeting or this weekend, or if you're talking to a friend of yours about this meeting and they had some things to comment about, the engagement doesn't end here. We still want to hear from you. So there'll be plenty of time to be able to still have input.
Yeah, actually, I'm just gonna throw another thing out there too. You know, we're very focused right now on mobility, and that's good, and access, and that's very good. But you know, if you know of anyone experiencing other kinds of issues that we haven't talked about, we'd like to hear about those as well. I mean, you know, some people may rely on walking and biking to get to job interviews, and maybe they're having fewer opportunities because of it, maybe accessing health appointments, et cetera. So if you can, really anything's game where transportation issues are being discussed here. So please let us know.
One of the big concerns that I have of all the new apartments going in downtown, there's very few grocery stores in that area that they can easily walk to. Safeway is probably the closest down at Cypress and Pine, and there's some few smaller convenience stores, gas stations and such, but some more opportunities for milk and eggs and bread downtown.
Absolutely. Well, with that, again, I want to say thank you. Again, as I just said, the engagement won't end here. There'll be plenty of time to still add some comments, but you can see from all of the typing and all of the different things on the screen, the smaller the type is, the more detailed and exact things that we have, which is absolutely fantastic. But we got questions across the board in all very different ways. Sarah has one more question about e-bikes. I know yep. Supporting the e-bike programs for mobility coming around. Let's add that last one to the map. And with that, we'll go back to our presentation. I love a full mural map, so fantastic. Engagement. And with that, we're going to send it back to Matt to talk a little bit about potential improvements, and we're going to have some live polls to go along with this.
So thank you. And I think we've talked about almost all of the improvement types that we might propose as part of our discussion here already. So I may feel a little bit repetitive, but just in the interest of anybody that want to make sure we're being inclusive in discussing these. And I will just encourage, I love all the conversation that we're having. So if you have more thoughts or any thoughts as I'm going through this, please just continue to share in the chat as well. So really great feedback that we're getting tonight. So just to talk through some of the improvements that we're talking about, I think it was Sarah that was sharing some accessibility issues around curb ramps. So one of the focuses of our efforts here will be completing those sidewalk connections, sometimes looking at side paths. So that's a pathway that's physically separated through a buffer, kind of a little bit further away than what a sidewalk would be as well. But I did want to emphasize the point around making ADA accessible curb ramps. So you can see that nice example there on the right-hand side of a ramp that is getting you down to the street and is compliant so that people that are using an assistive device or in a wheelchair rolling are able to do that in a comfortable manner as well. So that is a part of the improvements that we're looking at as part of this. And so with that, maybe we'll just open up our first poll here for this of just, do you support new sidewalks or paths in the neighborhoods that we're looking at here? We recognize that some of the neighborhoods we're talking about have a more rural context in the Victor area, and so just sometimes we want to make sure that folks are able to share whether they want that type of improvement or not. And it looks like we have a solid yes on that one. So next slide. In addition to that, also looking at crossing improvements, we've talked about a number of difficult crossings currently. So again, that looks like adding in some curb extensions, so narrowing down the roadway so that we can shorten that crossing distance and increase visibility so that a driver can better see a pedestrian that's waiting to cross, a pedestrian can better see a potential conflict with a vehicle, while also shortening the time that they're actually in conflict with each other by reducing that crossing distance, as well as adding either some high visibility markings. You see there on the right-hand image, again, those big white crosswalks on Center Street, really to increase the visibility, make drivers aware that they could expect pedestrians to be crossing there. And then also looking at other enhancements like flashing beacons at those intersections to, again, add that extra level of attention and warning to drivers of pedestrians crossing in the area. So with that, maybe we'll open up that second poll of, looking just to understand, when you think about these neighborhoods, again, where do you see the greatest need for crossing improvements? Schools, residential areas, trails, recreational access, or major roadways? Give that just another minute. All right. Yeah, it looks like major roadways and trails and recreational access crossings are important. Thank you. Topic I think we've talked a little bit about here is really taking those neighborhood streets and making them more comfortable for people walking and biking, and usually that involves slowing vehicles down. So there's a couple examples here of some traffic calming improvements. So there's a mini roundabout on Shasta Street and Olive, I believe, as well as a diverter and kind of chicane here to allow diverter here to allow bicyclists to continue through while preventing vehicles from going through the neighborhood. There are also a number of other traffic calming treatments, speed tables, chokers to just narrow the roadway down. So wanted to ask our last question here of, are you supportive of new traffic calming improvements in these neighborhoods to slow speeding vehicles down? All right, we got a majority are supportive. And then finally, looking at opportunities for some enhanced bikeways as well. So that can be something like I mentioned earlier of the off-street paths where you have that path off the side of the road. It can be buffered bike lanes or separated bike lanes like you have on Center Street again, showing some examples there of where we have that physical separation in addition to the paint to help, again, make that facility more comfortable for a broader range of people that are biking along there. And so with this last question, what I just ask is in the chat here, as we're looking at some of the bike connections in our neighborhood. So again, I'll encourage you to think about those three neighborhoods that we're focused on today. I know you guys are very passionate and have a lot of other ideas as well. But where do you see the greatest need for new bike connections when you think about our three neighborhoods? Again, that kind of Butte Street Boogie neighborhood, Hilltop, and then the Mistletoe neighborhood around the Victor extension. Ask that you drop that in the chat. Do you have any thoughts on that?
So it's not a survey question.
Mm-mm.
Hilltop?
Just open-ended. And again, thank you, Anna and Catherine. We'll get those up on the.
There's no poll this time.
Hilltop. Absolutely.
Right. Strong votes for Hilltop.
All right. Well, thank you, Matt. So before we go into awesome mistletoe, the whole Hilltop area, Fiona, if you could do me a favor and unshare your screen before we bring up Keith to talk any last questions or feedback. We would love everyone to turn on their cameras if they could. We're going to take a little group shot. If not, we'll just take it here. But again, we'd love to see your faces and see who we've been chatting with tonight. And again, I want to just say thank you all so much for your comments and your concerns. All of the questions have been fantastic. So let's get this done real quick. So we'll do it in, all right. Wonderful. We're going to do it in 3, 2, 1. Great, guys. Absolutely fantastic. All right, Fiona, you can bring the presentation back up. Really appreciate you doing that with us. And this is our last section right here for any other final questions and for our project team, for Michael, for the city. This is the time to ask it before we move to our next steps for the project. But again, you all have been really active, really appreciate it. All right, Keith will move to, or Clarissa, the whole Hilltop. Again, we're hearing a lot about Hilltop. Glad we're gonna address that. But with that, we'll move to the next steps with Keith.
Okay, yeah, thank you again, everyone, for participating tonight. And just some of these next steps, we've really hit on it a lot, so I'll try and go fast. But yeah, please do reach out to me and or Zach to send us your additional thoughts on the proposed improvements. Our emails are there at the bottom. And then also send us accounts of close calls or crashes with vehicles, people walking or biking on the project corridors. I can't stress how important this is. And I don't mean just like, oh yeah, I saw someone get hit or, you know, that happened to me. We're not looking just tick a box. We want a story, because ultimately what we're submitting is a grant application, which is a story. And we need to be submitting compelling stories to the grant evaluators that convince them, we need to give Reading millions of dollars to build these improvements, and not Sacramento, or San Diego, San Diego, whatever. So yeah, we want to hear the need, and it's a human interest story. So please do reach out to me or Zach on that. And then on that, actually, sort of further, if you're open to it, I'd love to do a video interview with you, and you could tell me about some of those instances or other ways that walking and biking has improved your life, perhaps. Again, just speaking to this human interest story, and that's something that we could include as access in the, we include in the application, and evaluators could have direct access to that. So then next, after that, we're going to be preparing the drawings for these projects, the designs with the drawings, and then do the initial grant writing, like we talked about earlier, and doing the stakeholder meetings with our other partners to work out some of the more trickier project details. Like Zach mentioned, some of these things are not a slam dunk. Mentioned that bridge over there on I-5 over on Hilltop, and then similar thing on Victor. So yeah, we've got to work through some of these things, and then eventually we're going to come back and show you the designs that we're going to move forward with based off of all this fabulous input that you provided here tonight. If there are opportunities for other in-person engagement, we'll definitely, reach back out to you and let you know of ways to get involved. But finally, we'll finish up with the grant writing and submit those applications to an expert grant writing review panel, so that they can kind of check the work of our great grant writers. And so this is just an extra layer of review so that we can really be submitting the best product we can. Yeah, that's about it. I really appreciate everyone coming, and do reach out.
And we will be posting the video to our YouTube channel. If anybody wants to review this or share it with their friends or anything like that. Our YouTube channel, I'm pasting it into the chat. It's a really difficult to remember URL. So if you subscribe and help us get to 100 subscribers, we can change it to something a little more memorable. So we'd be very grateful if you could do that.
What's our timeline for submittal of the grant application?
Sure. Yeah, the deadline is June 15th, but do not wait until then to get us your anecdotes, your stories, because we really do need them now, because that will inform designs, that will inform the grant writing. So we really need that information now. But yeah, so June 15th is the deadline, and then decisions will be made, should be made in October. I say should just because in the past couple cycles, we've had some natural disasters that have shifted things out a bit, but that's not going to happen this year.
Let's hope not.
Wonderful. And again, I just want to say thank you all for your time here tonight, for all of the fantastic comments, for participating here. It really was a wonderful evening getting to know the area, getting to know you all a little bit more. As Keith said, please stay in touch. Please set up an appointment with him to talk with him more about these stories and these human interest stories. They're super important for what we're trying to do here. And again, please stay tuned to the YouTube page. Pass this along to anyone that you might know who might be able to still give us comments. Again, we'll be collecting comments all the way up until as much as we'll drive our grant writers a little crazy by collecting comments as much as we can, but that's our job. Anyways, but again, thank you all for your time here this evening. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week and a fantastic weekend.